Look at you, sitting there with that face, that flat, unreadable, unimpressed face. The one that used to mean nothing to them and now means everything. They noticed it, didn't they? The shrug, the silence, the way you heard the insult, the threat, the ultimatum, and you didn't even blink. You just said okay and kept moving. That's not boredom. That's not numbness. That's not giving up. That, right there, is the single most dangerous expression a human face can make. And they know it, because the moment you stopped reacting, they started panicking. Not loudly, quietly, in group chats, in late-night messages to each other that start with, "Have you noticed how they've been acting lately?" Quick interruption, because this matters. This channel has been demonetized, which means the platform decided this particular truth wasn't allowed to earn what it deserves. If any of this is landing for you, you can support the work directly through the Super Thanks link in the description below. It costs you nothing to keep watching, but it means everything if you choose to back this. Now, back to the part they don't want you paying attention to. They thought your silence meant surrender. It meant something far worse for them. It meant you finally ran the numbers, closed the case file on caring what they think, and filed it under irrelevant. And the second you stopped fighting them, you became something they have no protocol for, because everything they know how to fight is loud. Nobody trained them for quiet. So now they're doing what every cornered, comfortable little control system does when the thing it used to manage stops responding to management. They're studying it, documenting it, whispering about it like it's a symptom instead of what it actually is, which is the most advanced form of self-respect a person can develop. And it terrifies them down to the bone. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about why your whatever reads to them like a loaded weapon. Why your indifference triggers more alarms than your anger ever did. And why the moment you stopped giving them a single F times CK, you became the most closely monitored, most quietly feared person in every room you walk into. It didn't happen all at once. That's the part they missed, because they were too busy watching for an explosion that was never coming. They were braced for tears, for screaming, for the dramatic breakdown they could photograph and use as proof that they finally got to you. What they got instead was quieter and so much worse. They got nothing. You stopped explaining yourself mid-sentence and didn't bother finishing the thought. You stopped checking your phone after an argument to see if they'd apologized. You stopped flinching when your name came up in a room you weren't in. One by one, the levers they used to pull on you just stopped responding, and the silence where your reaction used to be became the loudest thing in their life. At first, they called it a phase. People love calling things a phase right up until the phase outlasts their patience and becomes a pattern. Then it stopped being a phase and started being a problem. Because a person who has stopped reacting is a person who has stopped being predictable. And nothing scares a comfortable manipulator faster than losing the ability to predict you. They tried the old tricks first, because old tricks are comfortable and comfort is what cowards run on. The guilt trip, the slightly cruel joke disguised as a joke. The "I'm just saying this because I care" speech delivered with the warmth of a courtroom. And every single one of those tricks landed on you like rain on a closed window, wet on the outside, dry where it actually mattered. That's when the watching started in earnest. Not casual watching, active watching. The kind where people start asking your friends pointed little questions about how you've been. The kind where your name comes up in conversations you're not invited to. The kind where someone just happens to bring up old wounds in front of a group to see if you'll wince. You didn't. And that, right there, is the exact moment you went from being a person they knew to being a subject they were building a file on. Because here is the truth nobody says out loud. People don't fear your rage. Rage is familiar. Rage they can manage, mock, or wait out. What they fear, what genuinely keeps them up at night, is a version of you that simply does not need them anymore. Here's the mechanism, laid out plain, because you deserve to understand exactly what you broke. Every relationship built on control needs one ingredient to function, and that ingredient is your reaction. Your guilt, your fear of disappointing them, your hunger for their approval. That's the fuel. Take away the fuel, and the entire engine they built around you just stalls out in the middle of the road. A person who still cares what they think can be steered, a little disappointment here, a little praise there, a well-timed silence to make you anxious, a well-timed compliment to make you grateful. And just like that, you're doing exactly what they wanted while thinking it was your own idea. That's not a relationship. That's a remote control with a face on it. And for a long time, that face was yours. So when you stopped caring, you didn't just become harder to manipulate. You became unreadable. And unreadable is a category their nervous system has no file for. Predictable people, even angry predictable people, are calming to a controller because the controller always knows the next move. You took the script away. No script means no moves they can counter. And no moves they can counter means no control. Full stop. This is why your calm gets called cold. This is why your boundaries get called mean. This is why the version of you that finally stopped bending over backward gets quietly rebranded in their conversations as different, off, not like before, as if becoming unmanageable is a personality disorder instead of the single healthiest decision a person can make about their own life. They're not wrong that you changed. They're wrong about what the change means. What it actually means is this. You ran a full audit on every relationship, every obligation, every old wound, and you assigned each one an honest cost. And for the first time, instead of paying that cost out of fear or habit or guilt, you simply declined. That's not apathy. Apathy doesn't require courage. What you did required you to sit with the discomfort of disappointing people and choose your own peace anyway, every single time. And the people who built their comfort on your compliance felt that decision land like a structural failure, because in a way, it was. You didn't burn the building down. You just stopped being the load-bearing wall holding up everyone else's convenience. And the second that wall walked away, the whole structure started creaking in places they never expected, which is exactly why they're suddenly so interested in studying you. Let's be honest about something, because the people watching you from a distance love to pretend this version of you arrived overnight, free of charge, no installments required. It didn't. Nobody wakes up one random Tuesday and simply decides to stop caring about people who hurt them. That kind of detachment is not a personality trait. It is a wound that finally finished healing into a callus. You cared. That's the part they conveniently forget. You cared so much, for so long, that you bent your own schedule, your own opinions, your own boundaries, just to keep the peace in rooms that never once protected your peace in return. You apologized for things that weren't your fault because conflict felt more dangerous than self-erasure. You shrank repeatedly, quietly, and called it being easy to get along with. And every single time you shrank, something in you took note. Every dismissed feeling, every "you're overreacting," every time your needs were treated as an inconvenience to someone else's mood, none of it disappeared. It compounded, slowly, in a part of you that doesn't forget even when you forgive, until one day, the weight of all that compounding interest became heavier than your fear of disappointing people. And that's the day everything changed. There was no single dramatic moment, no cinematic walkout, no perfectly timed last straw, though they'll tell each other there was, because a single moment is easier to gossip about than years of erosion. What actually happened was quieter and far more permanent. You simply ran out of the specific kind of energy required to keep performing a version of yourself built entirely for other people's comfort. So when they say you changed overnight, understand what that sentence is actually confessing. It's confessing that they never noticed the years of erosion happening right in front of them because they were never paying attention to your cost, only to your usefulness. The overnight change they're so unsettled by is just the final second of a process that took everything you had, and you survived every second of it. This is why your calm doesn't look like peace to them. It looks like a closed door, because in a very real sense, it is one. You didn't arrive at indifference by accident. You earned it through every unreturned effort, every uneven compromise, every time you gave more than you got and called it love instead of what it actually was, which was a deficit you were quietly bleeding out from for years. Here's what nobody warns you about once you stop reacting. The people who relied on your reaction don't just shrug and walk away. Some of them escalate, because losing control of you feels, to a controller, like losing control of themselves. And people in that particular panic get inventive in ways that are equal parts predictable and exhausting to watch unfold from the outside. First comes the testing phase, where they manufacture small conflicts just to see if the old version of you is still in there somewhere, hiding behind the new calm like a hostage waiting to be rescued. A snide comment here, a boundary accidentally crossed there. Little provocations dressed up as nothing, designed purely to check whether your stillness is real or just a performance they can crack with enough pressure. When the testing doesn't work, they move to recruitment, pulling other people into the project of figuring you out. Mutual friends get quietly interviewed. Family members get strategically looped in with a carefully edited version of events. Suddenly, you've got 3 different people relaying messages, asking questions, just checking in, and every single one of them is really just another sensor in a surveillance network built around your indifference. When recruitment fails, they move to narrative control, which is the oldest trick in the book, and somehow still the most exhausting to witness. They start telling a story about you to anyone who'll listen. A story where your calm becomes coldness, your boundaries become selfishness, your healing becomes running away. Because if they can't control your behavior anymore, they'll settle for controlling how everyone else interprets it. And when even that doesn't get a reaction out of you, something genuinely strange happens, something they'd never admit to out loud. The fascination starts. They begin studying your posts a little too closely, mentioning your name a little too often in rooms you're not in, comparing every new person they meet to a version of composure they can't replicate. And somewhere in the middle of all that obsessive observation, the line between fear and reverence gets blurry. This is the part that should tell you everything. A person who truly didn't matter to them would simply be forgotten. You don't build elaborate surveillance networks around someone irrelevant. The amount of energy they're spending trying to decode your stillness is, ironically, the single biggest confession available that your stillness rearranged something in their understanding of themselves, and that rearrangement is not something they know how to undo. Here's the twist they never see coming. Because they were so busy watching for cracks that they forgot to check whether you were watching back. You were. The entire time they thought they were running an investigation, you were quietly running one of your own, except yours didn't need group chats or recruited spies, because you'd already learned the only data set that actually matters, which is patterns. You know exactly which one of them gets uncomfortable in silence and fills it with a slightly cruel joke to regain footing. You know which one only shows up the week before they need something. You know which one performs concern in public and disappears the second the cameras, literal or social, turn off. None of that information cost you anything to gather, because people who feel safe being watched reveal everything eventually. So while they were busy compiling their little file on your sudden coldness, you were quietly compiling something far more accurate. A complete map of exactly who shows up, who disappears, who only loves the version of you that's useful, and who actually stays when there's nothing left to extract. That map didn't come from bitterness. It came from finally paying attention with your eyes open instead of your guard down. And here's the part that should land heaviest. Once you have that map, their tactics stop working not because you're suppressing a reaction, but because you genuinely don't need to perform one anymore. The guilt trip lands on someone who already knows exactly what it's designed to do. The manufactured conflict gets recognized in real time as manufactured. You're not numb to it. You're simply too informed to be moved by it. That's the reversal nobody saw coming, the one that should have been obvious from the start. The hunter spent so long trying to figure out the prey that they forgot the prey had been watching them just as closely, just as carefully, with none of the noise, and all of the patience. You weren't the subject of their investigation. You were running the only investigation that ever actually mattered, and you already have the results. So let them keep watching. Let them keep whispering in their little circles about how different you've become, how unreachable, how unreadable. Every minute they spend trying to decode your calm is a minute they're not spending controlling you, and every theory they construct about your indifference is just another version of the same confession, repeated in a slightly different voice. They miss the version of you they could move. That version is not coming back. Let's talk about what's actually waiting for you on the far side of all this. Because the loneliness at the top of indifference is real, and pretending otherwise would be a lie wrapped in motivational language, and you deserve better than a lie. Once you stop performing reactions for other people, the room gets quieter. Not everyone stays. Some people only love the version of you that bent. That quiet can feel like loss for a while, because in a sense, it is one. You're not just losing the people who only wanted your reaction. You're losing the identity you built around being available, agreeable, easy, the one that earned you praise you mistook for love. Letting that identity go is a genuine grief, and there's nothing weak about feeling it, even while you keep walking forward anyway. But here's what fills the space that grief leaves behind, slowly, in a way nobody can rush for you. You start noticing how much lighter a room feels when you're not constantly auditing your own behavior for other people's comfort. You start noticing how much energy comes back to you once you stop spending it bracing for reactions that, it turns out, you were never actually responsible for managing in the first place. You start choosing your circle instead of inheriting it, which is a different kind of relationship entirely, one built on people who show up without an agenda, who stay without needing to extract something first, who don't require your performance to feel comfortable around you. That circle is smaller. It's also the first one in your life that doesn't run on your exhaustion, and the difference is not subtle once you feel it. And the people still outside that circle, the ones still watching, still studying, still whispering about the version of you they can no longer reach, they're not actually worried about you anymore. Not really. What they're worried about is what your stillness reveals about the work they haven't done on themselves. Your calm is a mirror they didn't ask for, and mirrors don't apologize for showing the truth. They just exist, plainly, unafraid. So here's where you actually stand right now, stripped of all their commentary. You're not cold, you're calibrated. You're not running from feeling. You spent years drowning in it and finally learned to swim. You're not avoiding people. You're simply done auditioning for ones who never once considered auditioning for you. That's not apathy wearing a disguise. That's the most honest piece you've ever built, and it was never theirs to analyze in the first place. So let them keep their files. Let them keep their theories, their whispered comparisons, their group chats full of questions they're too afraid to ask you directly. Every minute spent trying to explain your stillness is a minute spent confirming exactly how much room you used to take up in their life and exactly how unprepared they were for a version of you that simply, finally, stopped asking for permission. You didn't lose your fire. You just stopped wasting it on people who never deserved the warmth in the first place. And the next time someone calls your peace a threat, you don't owe them an explanation. You already know what they actually mean. They mean they finally met someone they can't move, and they have absolutely no idea what to do with that, except keep watching, keep wondering, and keep finding out the hard way that the answer was never coming.